Hi, I'm Sue Stack. I'm one of the co-founders of Our Revolution Thurston. We're a local affiliate of Our Revolution National. And this evening we are having a progressive candidate forum. We want to welcome everyone in the audience, and we appreciate your attending and to be educated about the candidates locally. This evening, we will start with the congressional district races. We have candidates from CD3 and a candidate from CD10. Following that, we'll have two candidates from the the Olympia Port Commissioner race. After that, there'll be the Olympia City Council races, and then there'll be the Lacey and Tumwater City Council race. Our moderators for this evening are Eric Miller and Yanah G. Cook. And do you want to explain the timing for the candidates' questions and intros?
Yes, and this is our first Progressive Candidates Forum, and we had each candidate had 3 minutes allotted to them to introduce themselves, and then we followed up with questions from the audience and from prepared questions that we had, and that those answers were about a minute each. We feel that this was really a successful event, and we are planning a second event for our second Progressive Candidates Forum for June 20th, Tuesday, from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Thurston County Courthouse, which is where we had this one on the 23rd. And we hope that you will join us.
So my name is Tamborine Borelli, and I am running for CD10 against Denny Heck. Yes. And I only have 3 minutes, so it's going to be a little challenging to compress it all, but I think that the best thing for me to do is just to tell you what's important to me. A brief summary of what I've been doing in the past year. I'm actually one of those part of the demographic that never got involved in politics at all. Basically, the short version of this is I never trusted politicians. I was always looking for a leader, a regular person that had innately within them a desire and a passion and a love for the people. That has become a little cliche, for the people, but in the essence of it, it's the truth. I never felt that from any other politician that I ever saw or heard. I never felt them in my heart until Bernie. So Bernie I saw as a leader that I could completely put my whole heart and soul behind. So I went all in and opened a volunteer campaign office here in Yelm, with a few people here, and was the deputy field organizer for the campaign, a caucus site leader, eventually and a national delegate. So what I experienced in the past year, obviously we all know how it ended. I, like many of you, were heartbroken and retreated for a while, for a couple months. No one saw hide nor hair of me until I saw a post about the port, actually, and there was no one. The conversation was, we don't have anyone to run against a couple of these conservatives, and I was like, I'll do it. I didn't really know anything about the port, but I was willing to learn. And long story short, when I was interviewing for the Washington Bernie-crats, it was asked, they were asking national questions, much of like what will probably be asked here tonight. It really wasn't in reference to port issues. And I had, strong feelings about certain things, like, Medicare for all, and like, you name it, the gamut of the progressive issues. I felt strongly about all of them. And so the question came to me, would you consider running for Congress? And I paused and was kind of caught off guard. But the next day, it turns out, well, you know what? Sometimes we plan and God laughs. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this. My time is up. See, it was hard to compress. So hopefully within these questions and answers, you can get a little more knowledge about who I am, what I believe in, and what I plan to do in CD10. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Yanah G. Cook, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Dorothy Gasque, and she's running for CD3, and she's going to come. Are you going to come up here, or did you want to? Okay.
Welcome her.
I am Dorothy Gasque, and I'm running for Congress in Washington's 3rd, just south of here. Civics was always an important part of my upbringing. My family taught me 2 things. 1, that democracy requires participation, and 2, that democracy must be defended. I volunteered to serve my country like my father and his father before him. When I deployed to Iraq, I was the only woman in an otherwise all-male combat unit. At the time, women weren't allowed to serve in combat roles. Yet I would find myself one day leading a combat patrol, another day managing base security, and on the worst days, losing my brothers. I am running because I find politicians to be entirely too eager to enter into and continue war. Too reckless with our patriots who are willing to put their lives on the line in order to defend liberty. When we take an oath, when we enlist, we take an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the enemy isn't Muslims, it's not undocumented workers, but it's also not Republicans. The enemy is the corrupting influence of big money in politics. We must restore our government to fulfilling its fundamental role of establishing justice, ensuring domestic tranquility, providing for the common defense, promoting general welfare, and securing the blessing of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. Together, we can take on big money and build a government that works for everyone so that we can all realize the promise of America. I began this journey in 2015 when Bernie Sanders said, "I think I'll run for president." And then he said, "I'm gonna do it." And I said, I'm gonna help that guy. Because he's been fighting for us for 40 years. The last time I was in this room was for a barnstorm for Bernie. And it has been a long and hard journey, but I did get to be a national delegate. And I've been working hard to build a progressive movement in Clark County. And that's kind of where I'm at. So I really hope I can count on your guys' support. And I'm Dorothy Gasque, and I'm running to replace Jamie Herrera Butler.
All right, moving on here. Please welcome David McDevitt to the stage. Give him a big round of applause.
My name is David McDevitt, and I'm not new to this rodeo. I ran for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District in 2015 and 2016, and I came in 3rd in the primary after a well-known state legislator jumped in at the very last moment on the very last day, Jim Moeller. I decided to run in 2015 because I felt it was time and to build name recognition for this race. And so I've done that. I have had over 14,000 votes, I think, 12,000 votes, I don't know, somewhere in there. And it's a hard job running as a candidate in the 3rd Congressional District because it's a 10,000 square mile district. And in order to be able to get out there and to develop that name recognition and those relationships with all the folks that you need to meet, you're pretty much traveling a lot of the time. So about me, I'm the child of a broken marriage. I grew up in a single family home. My father died when I was 11 years old, and I learned how to fight for what's right for everyone on the streets. I put myself through college. I joined the military and served 6 years. And I made it through a bachelor's degree in business and a master's degree in business and ultimately got a Juris Doctorate. I am trained in the law. I have never practiced law. But I know how to read it, and I know how to write it, and my commitment is to write law that will benefit all people, not just the wealthy 1%. Now, we're acquainted with what the current administration is doing. They're stripping away and chipping away at those things that we all regard as protections. We regard the EPA as protecting our environment, our rivers, especially our rivers here in the 3rd Congressional District and all throughout Washington. We're under threat by the fossil fuel industry in southwestern Washington. We've got these coal trains, we've got an attempt to put in an oil terminal, and we've got an attempt to put in a methanol plant, the largest in the world, in Kalama. We need to stop these things from detrimental effect to our health as a people of this. We need to fight for a health care for all approach. That's going to have some positive impact, but we need to have health care for all. Everyone needing health care should be able to receive it walking into the hospital without question and without knowledge of how much you can afford to pay. And with that, I'll answer more questions as they come. Thanks.
And this question is for each of the candidates, and you'll have 1 minute to answer. And that question, to begin with, is what are your qualifications or resume for seeking the elected office generally, and in particular, this particular office that you're running for?
So my, check.
There's a little switch on the bottom.
There we go. So my qualifications are less in regard to letters behind my name and more having to do with my life experience. My whole life, I have been a seeker of knowledge throughout different philosophies, religions, organizations, and through that I discovered that all walks of life, no matter what religion someone was, what political persuasion that they were, the common thread was that we all are connected as human beings. So with that knowledge, I believe will be a great asset, especially in Congress, when having to work across the aisle with other human beings that might have a different letter behind their name. Another thing I would say is courage. I've always had a passion for sticking up for the underdog. And we, I believe, 99% of us are the underdog. My time is up. I'd love to tell you more about. Thank you. Save time. I'm not going to stand up and get back down. I like to say, on answering this question, that my resume does look different, but my leadership is battle tested. I've been a leader in the military, and I've been a leader of this movement. And so I feel like, I'm qualified to be a leader of the 3rd Congressional District. I think people have a misconception of what Congress members actually do. They're there to represent us. And the qualifications in the Constitution are that we're over the age of 25, that we live in our district, and that, we're U.S. citizens. And I qualify under all of those things. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to wonder, if you're going to be able to put food on the table at the end of the month after you paid all your bills. I know what it's like to be afraid of those healthcare bills. So those are my qualifications.
Okay, well, qualifications. Qualifications come in the form of education. They come in the form of career experience. And so from that standpoint, I've got the business background, I've got the legal background to read and write laws so that it benefits the people, not just the top 1%. My career background included being involved with corporate budgets of billions of dollars and managing those budgets over the course of 14 years. And I was at the highest level of corporate finance in that organization, working with a team of 14 people. I've also done a lot of volunteer work, supporting Big Brothers Big Sisters, supporting the AIDS cause, recognizing and participating in a variety of communities. My father was gay, my sister is gay, I'm engaged with that, the LGBT community. I think that there's a lot that goes into it with life experience, and I think that I have that experience to benefit everyone here.
All right, so here comes our first question from the audience, and they were nice enough to put a summary of their longer question for me too, so I appreciate that. So Tamborine, you first. How can we fight voter suppression and end winner-take-all elections?
Good question. I love election questions. I actually am on the board of Election Justice USA, which is an organization of attorneys and election integrity activists that are dedicated to that. Could you just rephrase, just say that one more time? I want to make sure that I get it
How can
clearly.
we fight voter suppression and end winner-take-all elections?
So here's the thing, with elections, it needs a complete and total overhaul. It's systemic on every level, from the suppression in regard to having to produce so many different types of ID. In certain states, it's definitely more prevalent than others. But honestly, election integrity is one of the most important things that need to be addressed in addition to everything else. We need to... Wow. Sorry. It's my favorite subject.
Okay, well, when it comes to election laws, we have a hard time dealing with this from a federal level because each state has their own rules and their own laws, and it's very complex in some states and easier in others. And so to answer this question, if you want to change electoral politics in the United States, it's going to take massive grassroots engagement, massive grassroots effort to try and get some standardization across the states. But we can fight voter suppression with, constitutional amendments. We can fight voter suppression with updating the Voting Rights Act, but I would say we probably need a constitutional amendment to ensure the Supreme Court won't then tear it down later. And that's, it's a difficult thing. We don't have that much effect on it at the federal level. Each individual state has its own rules and regulations. Ranked choice voting would be the way to really get rid of, winner takes all. That would be the answer to the question. I don't know if I really need to go on any longer than that. Just grassroots.
Voter suppression, wow. Okay, so listen, the whole idea of voter participation is so important to having a true democracy that we have to be engaged in every possible way available to us. And there are a number of ways. But first off, how about that decision for gerrymandering that just came out of Clarence Thomas? Yeah, bring that on. And that was a surprise. That was out of left field. Didn't expect it. So I'm glad we're seeing that. But at the local level and at the state level, there are a number of things we can do. First and foremost, I think we can talk about and try to implement automated registration to vote through either the DMV or the Social Security Administration or some other means so that everybody gets registered to vote. Now that won't cause people to actually vote, but let's get that happening to boot. And then secondarily, very quick, I'm just going to tell you that we need to participate in the electoral process by observing the elections in the county electoral office.
So switching it up.
Flip it around. Okay.
We have another question from the audience. How do you plan, in your position, how will you plan to stop illegal wars and the paradigm of violence?
You know,
Glad you got that one first.
I'm going to tell you that foreign policy is not my area of expertise, but I will say that I have my own impressions about it. We have gotten engaged in foreign actions at least 3 times over the last 2 GOP presidents, 2 on the part of George W. Bush and 1 with our current administration, getting involved in overseas actions that were inappropriate and that were without the approval, the necessary approval of Congress to get involved to the level that we did. And I have grave concerns over not being actively engaged with the United Nations so that we have a worldwide consensus before we're engaging in any kind of untoward activity. And so I would stand up against that and make a public voice to stop that activity.
I'll stand up for this one, 'cause this is where my passion is at.
There you go.
So it does begin with the fact that the Congress has not been standing up to their part. War powers belongs to the Congress, and they haven't done that since the Korean War. So we haven't had a legal war since World War II. And so, I mean, the best thing we can do is hold them accountable and really tell them that that is your job. There's a reason why our founders made it that way. Because kings were forever impoverishing their people, starting wars, pretending it was for the benefit of the people, when it was really for their own benefit. And so we need to keep saying these things over and over and over again until they start to listen. And then when they don't listen, we kick them out of office. And changing that paradigm of violence, it's with us. This room is full of people who understand that paradigm.
So I definitely agree. I am absolutely against regime change war. If I was in Congress in this moment, I would be standing in solidarity with Tulsi Gabbard and supporting her bill to stop funding terrorists. It's important that we understand the power that we have to put not only the pressure on Congress to do the right thing, as Dorothy said, because the power is in Congress to go to war. And the fact that there has not been a legal war since the Korean War is very telling. They are not acting as if they're serving us, the people who put them in office. If we don't want the war, our voice, what we want should be resounded in Congress. The people don't want it. And there shouldn't be regime change war. We should have our soldiers come back home, defend us, but not spend any more time or money chasing greed for profit.
I turned it off. Sorry. So before we say goodbye, just really quick, if each of you could give your name, your website, and again, the position you're running for.
My name is David McDevitt. I've got some lit over here and some remit envelopes. My website is mcdevittforcongress.com. My Facebook page is facebook.com/McDevitt, MBAJD. Invite you all to like that page. You can follow up and hear about our events. I've got one coming up June 10th in Centralia at the Veterans Museum.
And which race are you running in?
And I'm running for 3rd Congressional District to replace Jamie Herrera Butler.
Woo!
Dorothy Gasque. My website is dorothyforcongress.com. Facebook, Dorothy for Congress. My Twitter handle is @Dorothy4House. And I hope you guys will come check us out. Oh, and I'm running for CD3 against Jamie Rare Butler.
Tamborine Borelli, running for CD10. We are literally finishing our website right now, but it will be Tamborine Borelli for Congress.com. The same for Facebook. Actually, it would just be Tamborine for Congress. And our Twitter is Tamborine4House. I couldn't fit my last name, it's too long. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out and listening to us.
So please give our congressional candidates a huge round of applause for coming out here tonight. And welcome our Olympia Port candidates up to the stage.
Welcome E.J. Zita and Bill Fishburn. Let's start with you.
Thanks to everyone who helped organize this event, and thanks to everybody who's come out tonight on a beautiful night. I'm Zita, and I'm your Port Commissioner. The Port's job is to manage your property, public resources at the waterfront, the airport, and all over Thurston County for the public good, for public access, and for a healthy environment. I started out like you, a citizen concerned about politicians endangering our neighborhoods, ruining our environment, and wasting tax money to benefit private business. I've held the Port to higher standards for over a decade. First in my neighborhood, then on the Citizens Advisory Committee, and then elected to the Port. I'm the only progressive commissioner at a Port that doesn't want change, and that gets a little difficult if you believe what you read in the newspaper. We've made some progress. The public can now speak more freely at meetings, and they can even make presentations. The Port's new strategic plan that we just passed a couple months ago actually starts with the sustainability triple bottom line for economics, environment, and community. And we're centered on resiliency. That's amazing at this Port. And we have greater financial accountability. But the Port needs to do more. We need to move out of the past and into the future. We can do sustainable economic development and create jobs. We can protect our environment and help preserve working agriculture lands and open space. We can do economic development and be financially responsible. The Port's not meeting its own financial measures. We have a great financial director, and he's leaving. I don't know what's going to happen to the Port when he's gone, but we have to keep holding us to higher standards. I'm a farmer and a teacher. My mama raised cattle, and she taught me to look at the stars and to love nature. My students and I do energy science and climate science. As your Port Commissioner, I support renewable energy, not fossil fuel cargoes. I support agriculture initiatives, and I support sustainable development. The Port's a big ship, and it changes direction slowly. We can do this, working together. And we have an opportunity this year to elect 2 out of 3 progressive Port Commissioners. This is a moment in history. With that, I'd like to welcome my friend, Fishburn.
Sometimes it's the road less traveled. Yeah, absolutely. So good evening, everybody. Thanks again for coming out. What a great night, huh? So as has been said, my name is Bill Fishburn, and I'm running for Port Commissioner, District 2. I live here in Thurston County with my family, my wife, and 2 of my 3 boys, and a beautiful 4-year-old granddaughter. I've been in the community since 1996, and I've worked at Intel for the past 21 years. And while I was at Intel, I learned that a company can be an asset to its community, that the employees that work for that company can bring value to the communities where they live. And so I've been trying to bring value to the community where I live as a scout leader, involvement in the Girl Scouts of Western Washington board, and as a member and president of the Hispanic Roundtable of South Sound. But now, it's time for me to contribute to Thurston County by serving as your Port Commissioner. Many people don't know that the Port of Olympia serves all of Thurston County, that it runs 4 distinct businesses, 3 of those which operate at a deficit. So that means that if you live in Thurston County, more than $5 million of your taxes are supporting 3 money-losing ventures every year. Our Thurston County tax dollars prop up enterprises that may have made sense in the 20th century, but those enterprises no longer provide the same benefit or make sense for our county's future. So I want the port to bring value to all of us in Thurston County, not just a few select businesses. And with your help, I know we can do that. So the Port of Olympia, as a public entity, has an obligation to work for all members of the community of Thurston County. However, the business practices and culture in place today seem to value making decisions behind closed doors, to value the few over the many. And when a public asset like the port doesn't involve all of its stakeholders, it's excluding the very people that it represents. And don't you think that government of, for, and by the people should include the people?
Yeah.
Together we can help the port to become more inclusive. When Washington public ports were established nearly a century ago, the concept was really unique. We're one of very few states where the port commissioners are elected by the people. And our port was formed during the populist movement of the 20s, and populism was very pioneering at that time. And what that meant was it brought new endeavors with a bright, optimistic outlook to Washington. But now, as I look at the Port of Olympia, a port depending on fossil fuels as a revenue source, a port clinging to an industry of years gone by, and a port spending more money than it's bringing in, I know there are new ways to responsibly use our tax dollars, new ways to drive a 21st century economy, and new ways to better reflect our values.
Always end with your name.
That was Bill Fishburn.
Commissioner, District 2.
So we're going to move to the question and answer segment, and we can start with Bill. What is the county's role in planetary climate change? Oh, and this is a question from the audience. What is the county's role in planetary climate change, and what are you as Port Commissioner going to do about it?
Well, I think the first thing we can talk about is moving fossil fuel supporting materials through our county. That is a huge role that we play, and if you take it even a step further, there's sort of a moral obligation there. These fracking proppants that everybody talks about are actually being shipped to the Dakota Access Pipeline. And we all know the terrible issues that we saw in the Dakota Access Pipeline. Thank you. So that's a big role that we play. And me personally, I think we need to start listening to the people on that. If you go back to meeting minutes for the port as far back as 2012, we have the public, the people who are electing the officials saying we don't want fracking proppants coming through our community. But at the port, we're still doing it. So one thing that we have to do is bring a stop to those kinds of cargoes.
Bill Fishburn is right, and I agree with him. The city of Olympia passed a resolution standing with Standing Rock and asking the Port of Olympia to reconsider our policy of shipping fracking proppants to the Bakken oil fields. I brought that to my fellow commissioners, and they declined to consider the city's resolution. They declined to have a conversation either on the Port Commission or with the city. Instead, their response was to draft a resolution saying we will ship all cargoes, all legal cargoes. I proposed that we at least say that we would consider only safe cargoes, where safe means they will not endanger people, air, or water at a minimum. They refused to consider that. This is how our port operates. The port has an impact on climate change. Climate change raises sea level, and this isn't good for the port. We're not working in the county's interest, in the world's interest, or in our own interest.
This is a two-part question. First of all, how many votes do you need to win this election? And if elected, how would you make yourself accessible to all your constituents and the public and the party members, and how would you obtain their input on important issues and decisions?
Good question.
Well, it's a classic question. I need 50% plus one. And that's just about all I got last time. I ran against a fellow with a lot of name recognition and the support of the big business and status quo and a lot more money than I had. And I won because the people want change at the port. And Bill Fishburn is in a similar situation, and he can win too with your support. What was the second part of the question?
Number. Little Bill, how many votes?
You got that.
How many votes, and how would you be accessible to your constituents?
How would I be accessible? I'm accessible to my constituents. Phone, I'm not so good at. Email, I'm better at. I also have commissioner chats at least once a month. I put those on my Facebook site, and I even got the port to put it on their website. My next commissioner chat is next Wednesday at 5:30 down at the port's meeting room, and it's on our websites. Come visit.
So how many votes do I need? Zita stole my answer. Numerically, I think we figured out it's about 32,000 votes for me to take District 2. And hopefully everybody has heard the good news. There is no primary, so this is a full-on all the way to the November 8th deadline. So that is a big help. Helps us save a little bit of money. How would I be accessible to the folks in the county? So I live in South County. And I'll tell you, one of the things that interests me about the port is living in South County for the longest time, I thought it was the port of Olympia, that I didn't benefit from it. So I would be accessible through chats like Zita's talking about. I think for folks that don't know me, I'm a home brewer, so I have this idea, this grand dream of having Brew with Bill. Showing up with my 5-gallon keg and a CO2 charger, some dogs, and just sitting around and chatting with folks. So that's definitely one way. And the port used to do this. The commissioners went around into the community and had these kinds of chats, and it seems like they've gotten away from that except for Zita. So.
All right, so we'll start with Bill again on this question. So this question is, as both of you may know, there's been some speculation that the port commissioners are not exactly transparent. How do you plan on making the port more transparent, and what changes do you think need to be made?
Oh, this is a great question. It does take long looking into the port to understand what's going on. Real recently, a decision was made by the port to stop transcribing citizens' comments and putting them into the minutes for folks to use. Another decision was made that, there was discussion about making port minutes only available via video. So if you think about that in terms of somebody who maybe doesn't have internet, or somebody who's hard of hearing, or doesn't see very well on a video monitor, those are really non-inclusive ways of sharing the work of the government. And so those are things, very simple, low-hanging fruit, I think, that could be addressed very easily. And we're doing exactly the opposite of what the port's currently doing.
We need to change the culture at the port. The port is operated on a command and control structure. It's highly controlled from the inside. It's on a need-to-know basis, and leaders at the port appear to think that commissioners don't always have a need to know, or not all the commissioners have a need to know. Now, there is a state law that says, and there's Washington Public Ports Association guidelines that say that the port leadership's job is to inform all port commissioners equally. And we have a duty to the public to address the public's concerns. We are owned by you. We are managing public resources, and we have a duty to be open and transparent to the public. That's not the principle that our port is operating on. We need a change of leadership, we need a change of culture, and we need 2 progressive port commissioners to change the direction of this big ship.
Now, if both of you will please repeat your name and the position you're running for and your website and any other details for us all.
My name is Bill Fishburn. I'm running for Port Commissioner, District 2, Thurston County. My website is Fishburn for Port, that's the word F-O-R, fishburn4port.com. You can find me on Facebook at Fishburn4Port. If you type the @ Fishburn4Port, it's the same as the Twitter handle, at Fishburn4Port.
Say who you're running against.
I'm running against a man named Bill McGregor. So what you need to remember when you go to the polls is not Bill, but Fishburn. Fishburn.
Fish for commish.
on my logo.
I'm Zita, and I am your port commissioner in District 3. I'd like to remain your port commissioner in District 3. My website is reelectzitaforport.com. Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for these 2 wonderful people. Next on our agenda is we want to welcome the candidates for Olympia City Council.
All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and give our introductions here. So we're going to start out with Lisa Parshley. Did I say your last name right?
You did.
Okay, I got it right. And she can tell you about what position she's running for. Please welcome Lisa.
I think the first test was to get around all the wires. I'm running because I was raised to believe that you need to leave this world a better place than you found it. And I have spent my life doing that. I gave back to my profession for nearly 20 years working in associations. My job with the association was not only working with the EPA, the FDA, the USDA, but lobbying in Washington on behalf of the veterinary profession. I've also been in charge of the Washington State Veterinary Medical Association with 2 years as a president and about 6 years on the board of directors. You're supposed to give back to everything that gives to you. My profession has given me so much. Do you know what it's like to be a veterinarian every day and go in and see kitties and puppies? Well, I live in a community called Olympia, and this community is amazing. I have 2 small businesses. I run them progressively. $15 an hour minimum wage. Woo! All benefits paid for. Family leave. I believe in a progressive world, but I also believe in a world where my nieces and my great nieces and nephews to come have air to breathe and have water to drink. And not everybody in the United States is crammed into the Northwest because we're the only one with rain and food. All right? We are going to grow. Olympia is going to grow. It's on our heads to make that growth progressive, green, and for everybody. Absolutely, for everybody. I see a convergence of this growth in a way that scares me and excites me. The City Council sees it too. But I want to help the City Council actually reduce the carbon footprint of Olympia as we grow. I want to help the city face rising sea level, okay? We're not that far from the old shoreline in Olympia. What's going to happen in 50 to 100 years from now? We can't plan and go, oh, 25 years from now, we'll worry about that. We have to plan now. We expect up to 20,000 people in Olympia in the next decade. Okay, 5,000 of them are probably going to find themselves in downtown Olympia. We have a downtown strategy being planned. We need to get the zoning to go along with it so that we ensure all levels of housing, not just upper income. We need to give incentives to bring in small businesses and to help them do what we do on a daily business day. I do not believe that you cannot run a small business progressively. I do it every day. I am running for Olympia City Council. My name is Lisa Parshley.
Yeah.
And we have a proxy, Miguel Pineda, and you're proxy for
Clark.
Clark.
Clark Gilman.
Clark Gilman.
Thank you.
I just want to go ahead and apologize in advance. Clark couldn't make it because he's actually serving the city of Olympia right now at a city council meeting, so that guy's cool. A little bit about myself. My name is Miguel Pineda. I work for a homeless services agency here in Olympia. I have 5 children, ranging from twin babies to 15 years old. I was born and raised here in Olympia, and I intend on raising my family here. I attended Evergreen State College, and my mother actually still works there. But I'm not here to really talk about that stuff. I'm actually here to talk about what Clark plans to continue to bring to the city of Olympia. Clark Gilman has served for a year and a half as a progressive on Olympia City Council. With your help, he will be able to be a progressive leader for the next 4 years. Olympia is a time of economic recovery and growth. Our challenge is to influence the growth, to influence who benefits and who pays. Together we can insist on a more fair and local economy. We continue to resist the federal agenda, resist for sure. But will you also join Clark to build a better community here in Olympia? He's been doing that for you. In Clark's campaign, we believe that we can build a more just and equitable Olympia by inviting more people to engage and to vote local. We aren't running this campaign just to get Clark elected. Why was there a crowd of 100 people at Clark's May Day kickoff? It was a good party and they were serving really good beer, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Clark loves us because we were running a campaign to change the way that politics work in Olympia. What does inclusive and fair local government look like? What does local democracy look like in Olympia? What is Olympia's agenda? What is an agenda for the many and not just the few? How do we begin to make that agenda a reality? That is the progressive agenda that we will define and develop together between now and November. Clark needs your help. What is this #1 reason people volunteer? Right people volunteer because they are asked. I'm asking you, will you join us to reach those who aren't consistent voters and invite them to vote local? Will you join me to create opportunities for many voices to define and develop an Olympia agenda that serves the many? You stood up for a national change and to defend federal democracy. Will you stand up locally for a progressive candidate named Clark Gilman running for position number 4? I will, and so will my family.
All right, now I'm happy to introduce to you Renata Rollins, also running for Olympia City Council.
Good evening, it's so good to be here with everybody, and thanks Our Rev for putting on this forum tonight. My name is Renata Rollins. I'm running for Olympia City Council, position 6, and I'm running because Olympia is going through something of an identity crisis. right? We were recently named the fastest growing city in Washington State. We're anticipating 20,000 new residents over the next 2 decades. And so that's a lot of change, and that's a lot of transition. And so we're seeing not only rising population, right, but also rising home prices, rising rent, rising homelessness, and not to mention rising shorelines as well. So people are looking around at this situation and asking, well, okay, how do we welcome these 20,000 new neighbors while we continue to build an Olympia where people from all walks of life are able to coexist? How do we come together to meet our needs, meet our challenges, and rise to the occasion and meet our potential? And this is where it actually gets really exciting to me as a community organizer, because when we do have these challenges, we have rising rents, we have rising homelessness, but we also have a rising people's movement in Olympia. We have a movement for justice, we have a movement for equal access, we have a movement for accountability in the halls of power. We have a movement to align the needs of the people with the needs of our water, the needs of our land. And we have a movement to reconcile our diverse and intertwined and complicated and sometimes painful histories so that we better understand who we are as a community and can move forward to build an equitable future for all. My most recent organizing experience is for rights and safety of people living homeless. And what we've learned and what we've seen is that there are some common sense and neighborly solutions to our problems, particularly in homelessness, that could reduce the amount of people living homeless while also saving the city money. But it's hard to get traction on a lot of those issues because that's not where the current council's priorities are. And of course, we all know in this room that priorities are based on who's at the table. On the other hand, as part of this movement, it's been inspiring to see how the priorities on the council do shift when we are expanding who's in the room. And that's been my track record in Olympia as an organizer. I'm committed to bringing in more voices, especially from the most marginalized communities. And that's what I want to do as a council member. You know, they say change is inevitable, but conscious change, equitable change, building a community that works for everybody, that only happens from the ground up. That happens with us. This is a movement. It's a movement I'm part of. It's a movement we're all part of. And the only question remaining is, where can we go? I'm Renata Rollins, running for position 6, Olympia City Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The first question, and this comes from the audience, is, and we're going to start with you, Miguel.
Okay.
Do you support, and how would you implement it, a $15 minimum wage for Olympia?
What does Clark support?
Well, Clark, yeah.
I believe that Clark supports working families, and $15 an hour is what working family needs at the bare minimum. Clark supports a lot of working families. In fact, he's a teacher at Southside High School and works with many of those families that need that kind of support. So I would imagine, based on this gentleman's work, that he would support a movement for $15 an hour. Sorry if I'm getting up on this mic. I'm a singer. I don't know what to do.
$15 minimum wage. We all need to have an Olympia that we can afford and that's livable. And I think key to developing more consensus around this in the community and education is in part highlighting the success stories, businesses that are able to do it, like Lisa's business and others, because we hear this debate locally and nationally, and it just seems to be it's hard for people to walk down that path if they aren't able to imagine the way there. So highlighting examples that do work, and also recognizing that Olympia is not in a bubble, contrary to popular belief. We're part of a large region, and we need, I believe, conversations with the city of Olympia, Lacey and Tumwater, and the county to make sure that this is a regional direction that we're moving in is important. But yes, $15 minimum wage is excellent.
I absolutely believe in the $15 an hour. I actually worry that in even 5 years from now, that won't be a living wage. I think we need to have a way to actually gauge based on cost of living and inflation and everything else, to make sure our minimum wage, we don't every 2 decades have a discussion about it, that it's actually set in law to increase incrementally appropriately. But we need to first get it to $15 an hour. There are 3 ways to do this, in my opinion. By example, the city of Olympia needs to look at its own employees and make sure that we bring them up to $15 an hour. Yeah. Okay? And we don't let them have a 30-hour-a-week part-time because we don't want to pay benefits. Okay? We need to look at that. The second thing is my incentive. I absolutely 100% agree with you. There are a lot of progressive businesses in this town, and it's time we stand up and make a coalition and say, look, we can do this. And by doing this, we need to have tax incentives and we need to have an initiative. Lastly, law. Initiative. We need to make it happen.
All right, we're going to start with Lisa this time. Describe an initiative you would endorse regarding homelessness. And this is a question from the audience.
Excellent question. And I think homelessness is not against the law. I think it's a crime. I think somewhat when I look around my own neighborhood, when I'm at work and I walk down to the 5th on 4th, I see it around me. And I think that our recession of 2008, we're not completely recovered yet. And I think homelessness could only get worse in the future. Repeatedly, we have seen housing first. I could get behind an initiative where we look at housing first. Salt Lake City has shown this. If you go over to the Scandinavian countries, they showed this. If you get people in homes, they will stay there. Yes, we have some high risk people with intense needs that we do need to care for too. But I would support any housing first initiative, 100%.
Yeah, I have a feeling that all of us on here are probably going to have similar thoughts. Working for downtown livability and around homelessness specifically has been my passion and expertise the last several years. As far as an initiative to improve the situation for people that are homeless and decrease the number of people that are experiencing homelessness, I agree with the Housing First model. There's a levy right now that is worth looking at called From the Home Fund to provide supported housing for the most vulnerable people in our community. But I would also look at solutions initiatives that allow people, even while they are living homeless, to at least have a modicum of safety and dignity. A lot of the problem folks that are homeless are experiencing is they're making do okay out in the woods. It's not great, but they're able to take care, but then they get moved along. That doesn't really help anyone. Tacoma's supporting camps by providing restrooms, and we need to camps and garbage pickup. We need to look at the same thing.
As previously stated, this is a field that I work directly in, and we do get to see the successes of Housing First. And that's happening here in Olympia. And I think Clark in particular, we've had many conversations regarding that work and the work that he does to end youth homelessness in particular, and the organizations he chooses to work with, particularly the Bridge program and working at South Sound High School. I got invited to go and speak to a group of young students. Some had kids with them, kids with kids, and other folks missing different parents, or might have been some of their parents might have been enrolled in the military. But I wholeheartedly believe that Clark will support a lot of momentum, especially towards the Home Fund, which is, if you haven't heard about it, please educate yourself on that. I really feel like Clark, in his position, will continue to push for a conscious policy, and policy that benefits the next 7 generations.
We're going to start, this is the final question of this group, and we're going to start with Miguel. Can you name, Clark's 3 most important themes, issues, or priorities?
So one of the ones that I hear most often is making a seat for folks at the table. We can't know what it is that we need to work on if people don't have a seat. And sometimes we got to make room. That means giving up your seat so that other people can have a spot to be able to talk. That's one way. What was the other question? I'm sorry. Three priorities. Education, that's another one. He's an educator, and I believe that people that are educators, obviously lifelong learners, are really willing to take what they learn from their community and by processing from data and be able to produce really good policy that works for us, the people. The other one, I think the consistent hard work that Clark has provided in the transparency. He's my neighbor, okay? We live relatively like a few blocks away. I know that when there's something that I don't agree with, he's gonna get a knock on his door for me. And so I'm sure he probably wouldn't want everybody doing that, but as a community individual, there's definitely ways that he's gonna make himself accessible. Thank you.
So 3 of my priority areas. The first would be engaging with marginalized communities. And in my experience working with marginalized communities, it's not enough to just say, hey, we have a meeting at City Hall, it's at 7 o'clock, come. Because a lot of people have had really bad experiences interacting with power. We need to be meeting people where they are. And there's a lot of creative ways to do that. At the Well downtown is a wonderful place to meet a cross-section of the community, which I've been enjoying meeting there for years with folks. Secondly, affordability, specifically around housing and protections for renters. As the prices are going up, renters are finding themselves evicted without cause. They have 30 days to find a new home in a place where the vacancy rate is about 2%. It's almost impossible. So a just cause requirement for evictions, as well as housing affordability, which a lot of that can happen from amending our zoning laws. Right now, it's not legal for someone to put a tiny home on their property, which is a great way to get someone out of homelessness. And lastly, I really think we need, even though this isn't city property, we really need to step up our role as a stakeholder in the estuary.
I have 3 pretty distinct areas, but there's a lot of gray area. The first one is, as I've already said, I believe in a progressive business community, and I want to start with the City Hall. I want to work there. I want us to become a transparent organization. I've run transparent organizations, and we need to do it. We need to become the people running the government, okay? That's what we need to do. I'm not going to talk about the $15 minimum wage, but I have right on there. The second one is very big, the environment on all aspects. We live at sea level. We have the ocean is coming and is coming to our city. We have toxins in our soils, in our port. The port has done a fabulous job trying to clean it up, but we have a lot of other land we need to work with. And we have growth that's going to disturb some of this soil. We have sewer pipes running down Capitol that are wood. We have work to do in this city on infrastructure and the environment. And lastly, 100%, we need to work on the homelessness now, not 10 years from now.
All right, so before we say goodbye, if you could each introduce yourself one more time, what seat you're running for, and your website.
I'm Lisa Parshley. I'm running for Olympia City Council, position number 5. It's Lisa 4, F-O-R, Olympia, and same for our Facebook, and that's pretty much it.
Could you say who your opponent is?
Yeah, it's Alan Miller and Deborah Lee.
I'm Renata Rollins. I'm running for Olympia City Council, position 6. I have a Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Renata for Council, R-E-N-A-T-A, Renata for Council. And the website, renataforcouncil.com, will be going up within the next few days. The incumbent in this position 6 is Janine Rowe, and also another person running is Michael Snodgrass. Renata Rollins, thanks.
I am Clark Gilman, and I am running for City Council position 4. Clark's website is Clark for Olympia. That's 4olympia.com. And I think Clark's running against Donald Trump. I think that's who he's running against.
Please give our Olympia City Council candidates a huge round of applause. So now our Lacey and Tumwater City Council candidates. Yeah, maybe we should. So Lacey on this side, Tumwater on this side. All right, so first we have Michael Althauser's surrogate, Alex McCarty, his campaign manager, and so he's going to speak for a few minutes.
Thank you, Eric. As Eric said, my name is Alex McCarty, and I'm managing Michael Althauser's campaign for Tumwater City Council. Sorry, I haven't done this sort of thing before, so this is my first candidate forum. It's my first time running, managing a city council race. So I guess I signed on to Michael's campaign because I'm a Tumwater resident. I live a few blocks from Michael, and you know he's been a champion of progressive ideals. You know, for as long as I've known him. We went to high school together at Timberline. We're from the Olympia area. We went to Western together and studied political science. Professionally, Michael works as a civil rights attorney with Columbia Legal Services, who advocates on behalf of low-income individuals, seniors, and on homelessness issues at the state legislature. So those are some issues that are very important to Michael. So why did he decide to run for Tumwater City Council? He served on the Tumwater Planning Commission for the past couple of years, so he's familiar with a lot of the issues facing Tumwater, one of which is homelessness. A lot of people don't think of Tumwater when they think of homelessness issues. It's not as visible as it is in downtown Olympia, but we have a lot of open spaces, so like I said, it's not as visible. But what really shocked me is something that Michael brought to my attention was that the Tumwater School District has 184 homeless K-12 students. So that sort of thing is what's motivated Michael to run for city council. He wants to see Tumwater grow in a way that we have affordable, accessible housing so that we can try to address this homelessness issue. It's not just an issue for Tumwater, but for the greater Olympia area. Additionally, the city of Tumwater is growing. In the last year and a half, we've added 3,000 new residents. And that means that we need to expand our EMS and fire services infrastructure so that when we call 911, there's somebody there that can respond in a timely manner. For those of you that have lived in the Olympia area, you're familiar with the Olympia Brewery, how that sat vacant for over 15 years and has been a void in our community. So Michael would like to bring new energy to a lot of the good work that the City Council has already been working on to try to redevelop and revitalize the brewery district in Tumwater. This is the historical core of our city. Oh, I'm sorry, time's up. I didn't see that. Yeah, this is the historical core of our city, and I think Michael's going to bring a lot of energy to get that issue moving forward. So thank you for having me here tonight to talk a bit about our campaign. I'm here representing Michael Althauser, who's running for Tumwater City Council.
have Jonathon Kaplan. Let's hear a round of applause for you.
I too am brand new with this process. I am an academic, I teach in college. I'm not a typical candidate for public office, but politics as usual is not working. I'm an anthropologist, and as I say, an academic, although I have taught, traveled, and worked in many places around the world on projects of sustainable development and archaeological research. For example, among rural indigenous Maya in Guatemala, Tumwater is where proudly I call home. My mother was born and raised here, and both my parents are buried in the Oddfellows Memorial Park. Tumwater is a beautiful, small city in the gorgeous American Northwest. It will grow much more quickly than most people think because of the impacts of climate change elsewhere, which will bring many people to us, but which will also affect Tumwater in other terrible ways. Tumwater needs smarter growth. For example, new carbon neutral businesses engaged in sustainable manufacturing and that protect diversity, biological and cultural, must be encouraged to bring new jobs to Tumwater. Not all of the activities to feed our own rapacious consumption of the Earth's resources increasingly have come into conflict with what sustains us as a species. This is because of the fundamental struggle at their core, an uncontrolled attack on nature which ignores the fact that we humans are a part of nature. Last summer, I returned from 4.5 years teaching in Beijing, China. One of China's great philosophers, Althauser, said, quote, "Cherish all living creatures, among which even small insects or grasses and trees are not to be hurt." Compare this with Genesis 1:26. God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." Whatever role in history anthropocentric creeds may have played, they are now being found to fall far short of what is needed for us to survive. My first proposals, if elected, will be to develop future-oriented policies as we face the enormous challenge here of climate change. If elected, I will work tirelessly for more public parks, green spaces, and preservation of biological diversity in general. And I will push hard to change how we review new real estate development, scrutinizing all new proposed projects to make sure they do not erase what precious few natural environments we have left. While my primary issue is combating and mitigating climate change and its impacts, equality for and empowerment and protection of women, LGBTQ persons, people of color, and immigrants are also very important to me. Thus, I will work to ensure that every citizen feels welcome and valued in our community, and to make Tumwater prosper as the greenest and the happiest small city in America. Thank you.
All right, now some introductions from our Lacey City Council candidates, and first we have Madeline Goodwin.
Hello, my name is Madeline Goodwin, and I am running for Lacey City Council position 7. I am running on a platform of ideas. The short version is responsible, sustainable, prosperous. That is, I want responsible management for sustainable growth and a prosperous city. I believe strongly in equality. I come from a very diverse family. I have a DV background. My stepfather is a veteran who is finishing his MBA. I just watched him walk last weekend. My brother is just transferring to SPSCC from Orla because he has autism and that was the best fit. And my mom is a nonprofit executive director. So, diversity. I myself am LGBTQ, I'm female, and I'm young, which in politics makes me a minority, as we saw last election. Last election is what prompted me to run. I went to a city council meeting in February, and being something of a policy wonk, I walked out of it thinking, that's so cool. And then I learned that Virgil Clarkson is retiring, and there was an open seat, and I thought, Then there wasn't anyone else running, so I threw my hat in the ring. And then three other people joined me. My background, I have been serving my community my entire life. I grew up volunteering at libraries, at animal shelters, at retirement communities, and in the environmental world. I am an environmental scientist by training. I got my master's in environmental studies from Evergreen last summer, and I am an educator by career. I teach online, and I own a small tutoring business. I believe very strongly that the youth are our future. I also know that Lacey is expecting a lot of growth over the next 20 years. It is expecting to more than double in size, both geographically and in terms of population. Which is why I say responsible, sustainable, prosperous. If we grow and just grow, then we may very well face the same boom and bust cycle that so many other places have experienced. On the other hand, we can manage it responsibly, and I look forward to discussing my issues with you. My name is Madeline Goodwin, and I am running for Lacey City Council Position 7.
And our second Lacey City Council candidate, please welcome Carolyn Cox.
Hi everybody. I'm Carolyn Cox. I'm running for Lacey City Council Position 7. I'm actually from Florida originally. I grew up in a small community called Destin. You know Destin, okay. All right. Well, in those days, it was a fishing village of about 2,500, and you had to go to the neighboring community to go to school past 8th grade. There, they looked down on us as fish heads. I'm kind of the black sheep of my family. I grew up in a Republican family. They had pretty moderate views, but little did they realize that they would have a daughter who would grow up to be not only a Democrat, but a damn progressive one. So I'm used to rebelling, but I'm also used to having to form relationships with people of all kinds of interests, of points of view, of age, of color. We're all one big community. I'm running because I've learned to care deeply about Lacey. I moved there in 2001. I was in the market for a house, found out that housing prices were a little more affordable in Lacey than they were in Olympia. This was at a time when there were a lot of t-shirts going around in Olympia called Lacey Sucks. Still, I could afford a house there. So I moved to Lacey. I really didn't get that rooted into Lacey right away because at the same time I ended my journalistic career. My last 9 years of it were spent at the Olympian, and moved into public relations and worked at Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium for almost 6 years. So while I lived in Lacey, I did the jaunt up to Tacoma every day. And once I moved back into the community and got a little bit more rooted politically, I started finding my way. As a journalist, you're really not allowed to campaign, to put somebody's sign in your yard, to really do anything but try to be very objective. So to go from 25 years of that to suddenly being liberated, I'm free, I can campaign for whoever I want to. I actually joined the Green Party for a few years. That's how I met Chris Stegman. I don't know if Chris is still here or not, but Somewhere, Chris, anyway. I later decided I really was a Democrat at heart, even though I totally agree with the Green Party's philosophy. I think you can get a little bit more done as a Democrat. I'm running now after serving for 3.5 years on the Planning Commission in Lacey. And prior to, well, hello, I'll tell you more about that later.
We'll start with the Tumwater folks. The first question, that with so much of the growth that we're talking about in all three cities, Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey, if you're going to be the next city council person for Tumwater, what will you do about dealing with the growth and transportation issues, and how will you address them?
Okay, I'll try my best to answer these as if I were Michael. So the city has a zoning plan for Capitol Boulevard to try to turn that into an urban core. If you're familiar with Tumwater, it's pretty sprawled out. So that would mean that, you know, newer buildings, if you've seen the new building complex kind of on the way to the, or just before the airport, that's built curbside, so that makes it a lot more easier to walk from businesses and from the bus stop to businesses. So, you know, Michael supports that type of growth through the city of Tumwater to make it a more, you know, walkable, bikeable, and transit-friendly city. So, thank you.
Okay, it's a very difficult problem. Tumwater, I estimate, this is my own estimation looking at other data, Tumwater could grow by 2040. It could grow to 40 or 50,000 people. Right now we have about 23,000 people. So with the impact of climate change elsewhere, this was mentioned before, this is going to bring in a lot of more people because the effects of climate change are going to be less felt here, except of course if you live in downtown Olympia. So what to do? I think I spoke, when I first came here, I rented while I'm looking for a place to buy, and a little story. On a Sunday, in the quiet all around me, I heard suddenly the sound of big construction engines and machines. And it turned out this was the construction of a new Toyota car dealership. Mm-hmm. And I went to speak to Mayor Komet and to John Doan about this. And you know, as much as these people seem to be smart and nice, I don't think the smart development is really there. We have to get more to the question. We do have to bring in marginalized people. They're going to be coming anyway, and they have to have an equal place. Okay.
Can you repeat the question?
With the growth that we're looking at in the cities of both Tumwater, Lacey, and Olympia, with so much growth, how would you propose to face the challenges, and what programs might you use to address them?
So, like I said, Lacey is expecting to more than double in size, both geographically and in population. So growth is kind of the big issue. One of the things that I would really like to see is an expansion of public transportation and projects to make the city more walkable and bikeable. In particular, I would like to see public transit expanded to North Lacey and the Jubilee area. Jubilee is one of the major retirement communities. I also would like to see a green building initiative of some sort that would encourage small trade businesses to build ecologically friendly housing and mixed zoning developments that would have 100% renewable energy and otherwise be, and also provide local trade jobs.
projecting show that Lacey's going to grow by about 60% within the next 20 years. About 30,000 people are expected. My campaign is built on an overarching and an underarching theme having to do with the environment and quality of life. I think we're going to have to improve transit, and we're going to have to get up in Intercity Transit's grill and say, hey folks, we've been paying into this and now it's our turn. I also want to work on a concept called infill, where we encourage, through tax incentive, home buyers and businesses to redevelop existing properties rather than going out and mowing out more trees and paving over the land. That's senseless. So to the extent possible, I want to save our forested areas. And another huge looming issue that growth is only going to make worse is the number of people on septic tanks. If you look at a map of Thurston County, a lot of the septic is in Lacey and it's polluting our streams, and it's really bad.
We'll start with Carolyn this time. So here's our second question. This one is from the audience. We asked this to our Olympia candidates as well. Describe an initiative you would endorse regarding the homeless.
Lacey has been part of consortiums, and this year was actually our year to do community development block grant money, and they are putting money toward the homeless. Lacey does not quite have the homeless on the street problem that tends to happen in parts of Olympia, but there's a hidden homeless population. I think we need to largely work more with groups like Thurston Thrives that tend to put the efforts of the many into guided programs to help serve these people. One of my very favorite organizations is Sidewalk. They are doing a wonderful job at rapid rehousing of people. So more efforts for projects like that. And rather than have all these little pockets, there's a lot of people who want to do a lot of different good for the world. Bring them together toward the greater community good.
So, initiatives for the homeless. Well, one thing that I would support, and it's been mentioned before, the Home Fund initiative is starting in Olympia, but if it passes, they're planning to approach Lacey and Tumwater for an additional 250 affordable housing units. And I would certainly support that in Lacey. As Carolyn said, Lacey doesn't have quite the visible homeless population. What it does have is an affordable housing problem, in that there's a lot of housing being built, but most of the people in Lacey are younger people, they're military, or they're seniors and retirees. And they can't afford $400,000 homes. So I am advocating for affordable housing and mixed-use zoning so that people can live and work in the same place.
Yes, the question before this one, I didn't really answer that question, but very, very quickly. When I was in Beijing, they had instituted a policy of free bikes. And so there were biking ports all over Beijing, which is huge, 21 million people. So that might be something we could do in Tumwater. With regard to the homeless, I like the idea of housing first. I think we have about 400 homeless people in Tumwater. Get them into into their own house with a roof over their head. A lot of these progressive things that are talked about cost money. One other thing I want to say, I lived for 1 year in Norway. Norwegians pay 100% tax on cars and houses. So if you buy a car for $50,000, you pay $100,000. There's a limit to the taxes that we can raise in Tumwater, but I would look at rezoning, for example, clawing back commercial zones so that they would be mixed use, building houses for homeless, and seeing if there's something that we can do about raising taxes. Because I think it's a Republican BS line. Everybody hates taxes. Norway, just real quick, Norway is the country, Norwegians are the least likely to leave their country. They love it. And they pay 100% tax on things like cars and houses. So this line is just complete BS about taxes. Okay.
So as I said in my introduction, Michael advocates on behalf of low-income individuals and on homelessness issues professionally at the legislature. And he supports smart growth in the city of Tumwater that will include affordable housing options and housing accessibility. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, so I think that an initiative that worked on low-income housing units for the homeless, that would be something that he would potentially support. And if you'd like a more in-depth answer to that question, then you can come grab me after the forum, and I'll get your contact information, and we'll get that to you. Thank you.
This is kind of a fun question that came through. How will you address the, if you could recommend a book or a talk, like a TED Talk or something like that, which reflects your values and from which you get guidance, what would you suggest? What would you recommend to people? And why?
This is a pretty personal question, so I'm not really sure how Michael would answer this. Just based on what I've seen on his bookshelves, I've seen quite a few President Obama, Barack Obama books. I think he has a Joe Biden book, potentially. And I think those two leaders kind of espouse a lot of his values, so I guess that's why he bought them. So that's thank you.
Boy, I read all the time. I have so many favorite books that move me deeply. One of them was Buried My Heart at Wounded Knee, which just broke my heart. A book called, in my academic career, The Chronicles of Michoacan, which is an indigenous account of the Spaniards, of the Spanish conquest. And it is the most harrowing, awful story I have ever read. I think if I was a dictator, I would make everyone of wealth who had over $1 million be forced to go and live in the middle of Guatemala City for a year without, to live as a poor person. That's the way I learned about the world, by seeing how people really live, and not just in comfortable places that we have. So I would suggest the Chronicles of Michoacan.
Some of us read to escape politics. I think the book that most closely explains how I approach politics and policy would be a book called Sisters-in-Law. I forget the subtitle, or the second bit, but it's about the stories of Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and how they ended up on the Supreme Court and how they worked together. And I think it really highlights my belief that people are people no matter what letter they put after their name. Just some people choose a letter that I disagree with. But everyone deserves equal rights and equal access to everything, human rights. So, yeah.
Well, I am a writer, and I hope to write the book someday that will inspire a lot of people. But in the meantime, when the question first came up, the book that just immediately came to my mind is the book that really was one of the linchpins of the environmental movement. It's called River of Grass, and it's about how Florida just nearly destroyed the Everglades by building these canals that drained the Everglades. And people, I mean, that work is decades old, but if you read it, it really tells the story of how we're wrecking the planet, and I think provides me with an inner compass on how I want to live my life.
So that's it for the question and answer part. So if you would each just state your name, your website, and the position you're running for, and then we can say goodbye.
I'm Carolyn Cox. I'm running for Lacey City Council, position 7, and my website is still under development, but it is called choosecarolyncox.org.
My name is Madeline Goodwin. I am running for Lacey City Council, position 7. My website is goodwinforlacey.com. My Facebook page is facebook.com/goodwinforlacey. And my slogan is good win, good ideas. I hope I can have your support.
Okay, on the last answer, if anyone needs me to tell you Chronicles of Michoacan, I will spell that for you after this, so you can write it down. I have literature over there. I was working on my website before I came here. It will be called Jonathon for Tumwater City Council, position 6. And my name is Jonathon Kaplan, and I'm seeking Tumwater City Council, seat 6.
My name's Alex McCarty, and I'm Michael Althauser's campaign manager. He's running for Tumwater City Council, position 5. We're on Twitter. It's Mike for Tumwater, and we only have about 7 followers on there, one of which is my mom. So she was our first follower. So yeah, check us out on there. We're on Facebook as well. Just search Michael Althauser, and our website is michaelalthauser.wordpress.com. And if there's any Tumwater residents who'd like a yard sign, we can't post yard signs in the right of way. So anybody would like a yard sign, if you live in Tumwater, we'd really appreciate your support. Thanks.
Oh, sure.
So Chelsea, Chelsea Rustad or Rustad, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
This is who they're running against in case anybody didn't hear.
My opponent is Debbie Sullivan, seat 6.
Real quick, I do have literature remits over there, and I have yard signs in my car if you want one. I am running against Ken Balsley, Rick Nelson, and Carolyn.
And Madeline just said it for both of us. I too have both remits and invitations to all of you to my campaign kickoff party, which is 5 p.m. June 1st at the Lacey Community Center.
Thank you. Thank you for attending, and you can stay for a few more minutes, but I do want to thank everyone for coming. It takes a lot of work to put this together. I do appreciate everyone respecting the process and the energy and effort that goes into putting on these events.
We hope that you enjoyed that event tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.
As a reminder, our next event is June 20th, Tuesday, from 6:30 to 8:30 at the Thurston County Courthouse. It will be the Our Revolution Thurston's second Progressive Candidate Forum to educate the voters on the candidates running for local office. Thank you.
We hope to see you all there. Thank you.